Hello to my trading addicts out there. Welcome to the weekly watch list. This is Jeff Kohler, aka Option Addict, from over at www.tradingaddicts.com. It's been a long, lonely summer without some video analysis, but you guys know I've been in the process of revamping my workstation, machinery, data feeds, all that nonsense. So back up with all the software and everything. We're going to be getting back into weekly video analysis. So a couple things I want to talk about. Where we left the week off on Friday. I know I was only there for a couple hours, but we basically kind of took some positions, bought the open, and left things on for the weekend. A couple of reasons why we did that. The market's obviously been pretty heavy with all the nonsense that's been going on around the debt ceiling. Everyone knows that, and some positive comments coming out this evening, which has futures up a grundle. But the one signal that had me pretty bullish about, in regards to the equities was just the fact that McClellan, was at one point early Friday morning was down triple digits, which we rarely see. And because that's a rare occurrence, just that signal in itself is usually a good time to buy the dip. So with the 200-day moving average set there as some decent support, with the market just in the position that it's in, they're going to get some kind of a deal done. We initiated some longs. Couple things I want to look out for. Aside from that signal in itself, there's been a lot of things. A lot of twisted signals, a lot of just different currents, cross currents going on. A couple of things I like, which I think speak a little bit more bullish about the market, than what price action has really been doing. And one thing I got to say is this chart of copper. And so while equities have just been getting absolutely slaughtered, copper's done a really good job of staying up. This is a daily chart here, which will show you the last couple of weeks. And while equities have been getting killed, copper price have done a pretty good job of just staying up, accepting higher prices, not really responding to all the nonsense, not really breaking out, not really breaking down, just staying up, not really selling off. That was one promising signal that I took out of last week. The other was the fact that while equities were just getting absolutely pounded here, emerging markets did a pretty good job of just staying relatively calm, quiet, collected. Really no major sell-offs there. And I've been talking. I think we're due for some kind of a divergence here. Whether that's emerging markets leading equities higher or vice versa. Something I think is going to happen here. And I like the way this EEM's been all coiled up. I've got a longer-term position I've been holding in this ETF. I'm thinking about adding here because I think this is a really, really good spot. If this market's going to see any kind of a rally whatsoever, one thing I'd like to do is buy emerging markets while they've been performing really well against what the S&Ps have done as of late. So that, it's just a slight bullish tone to it, but it looks pretty good. We also had a little bit of, I can't really call it capitulatory action, but big blow-off move here in the VIX on Friday. Now, though, I don't like the VIX up here north of 25. As an option trader, that's kind of like kryptonite, right? Especially as an option buyer. You start delving into higher time premiums, that's really going to contract the amount of profit that you might typically take out of an option, especially when we're dealing with trading volatility in the teens. We've got all moving averages all coiled up here, if that makes any difference to you, if that's your cup of tea. But we've also got this big blow-off move that puts that VIX up north of 25, which is a pretty significant move considering what the range looks like over the last year. So I want to keep an eye on that. Likely, we're going to break out pretty good tomorrow. That volatility is going to come back in a little bit. But I'd like to see it get back down under 20. The faster we see the VIX back under 20, the better I feel about trading options, in terms of being a buyer, being directional, etc. And the one thing I do want to see here too is that Russell has been very, very weak. Now it's possible, and what it looks like is that tech is going to be the leader this go around. The Nasdaq stands the best chance of breaking out from these levels, as does anything from here. Small caps look pretty bad. The Russell got almost down to the neckline, right? Everyone's watching this big head and shoulders, this big developing top that's taking place. The Russell looked really, really bad. Had the best recovery out of them all, and it managed to hold that 200-day moving average, but the Russell still looks terrible. Really, really bad. So I'd like to see if we lift here a little bit. You just watch the percentages. You want to see the Russell lead here. You want to see the Russell catch up to the NASDAQ as quickly as possible. If the Russell lags on this next little leg up in stocks, then that means that I'm not really campaigning for anything bullish outside of maybe a test up near some of these highs. And, when the Russell gets out back up to something like 840, 850, I think it makes sense to start selling the rip. So, how bullish I get going forward depends on how quickly the Russell can take back and start to show some relative strength here. That's been the one concerning thing that I've been watching. But the banks look really good. That like Morgan Stanley, Goldman, Wells Fargo. A lot of the stocks look like they're developing some ranges down at their lows that they're starting to get ready to pop out of. So the banks start rallying here, guys, and I think that might be enough to keep the stocks up for multiple days on end. Rather than sit here and try to pitch you market analysis, everyone's going to sell their own opinion, so I won't do that here for too long. I'm really here just to talk about setup, so let's focus on that. I've got a pretty good list this week. I got to tell you, I like the Momo stocks here. I like Google to run up here and test its highs. I bought some calls here on Friday looking for a push here in Google. Gotta love buy the dip setups in Apple, in Baidu, in Amazon. Priceline, look for Priceline to try to get up to its highs this week. You gotta like all those here. So I'm all in there. I'm looking to trade weekly options in and out as little swing trades throughout the week. I love them all. They all look great. Outside of that, though, here's some of the things that I'm watching. Another long here I took on Friday was ARM Holdings. If you're not there, look at the setup here. I'm just trying to pay attention to relative strength right now, right? With the market selling off and looking pretty ugly, what stocks are up there near highs? What stocks are going to be the next stocks to take out their highs and break out? If the market were to put together a little bullish leg here, ARM Holdings looks fantastic. I think you got to be long this name. I also like this little dip buy setup in PCP. Right, I'm looking at stocks that have still maintained just decent looking trends, that haven't broken down, that have seen some volume, seen some bullish divergences, and Precision Castparts has all of that, which is why I like it. Speaking of Precision Castparts, I think about stocks like Caterpillar and whatnot, and Caterpillar near 100, near that 200-day moving average, near a trend like this that has been intact going back over 2 years. Great dip buy setup in my opinion. I'd probably look to get long some cat this week. I like the ag stocks, but only Monsanto and one more here. I like this little setup here in Monsanto. I think you want to try to buy the dip, looking for a breakout. But Mosaic isn't looking that bad either, in terms of this little reversal. I like the dip buy setup here to get up above that 200-day moving average and fill up some of that volume profile, which should take the stock to the high 70s, maybe even low 80s. Energy, I like Stone Energy. Love this pattern. That's a really, really good looking pattern. I like to buy the dip setup. These rounded bottoms, I think, are fantastic trading setups. You'll find one here, somewhat of a setup there in El Paso. And I got my eye on Schlumberger. Same reason. I'm looking for the next round of energy stocks. If they're going to break out, look for Schlumberger to make that move up to 100. Makes all the sense in the world to me. I like just some off-the-wall stuff. Ren. This stock bucked the market all week last week. So if the market goes up, that's going to be a stock that should want to participate. So I'd look for a long there, especially if you can get it under 11. Las Vegas Sands, don't ask me why. I just think the chart looks right. I think this stock's set to compete now. The casinos in general don't look all that great, but if I had to pick one, I do like the setup in Las Vegas Sands. I got to admit, something about it. VHC, I think, is in a pretty decent dip buy location. Right through here around that 50-day moving average. Probably going to try that as the week progresses. I like the SanDiscs. I think a lot of these stocks have put in a bottom. I'd say SanDisk, Broadcom. Love that Broadcom setup. And Qualcomm, go figure. Qualcomm's got a really, really good multi-month setup here with the way that it stayed just off of its highs. That to me looks like a stock that's probably going to attempt 60, if the market can stay up for more than just a couple of days. I like the consolidation action here in Tesla. It's kind of an off-the-radar setup. I think that stock might see a pretty good spike here over earnings. Oh, what am I missing here? Cree. I'm long some Cypress calls here. I like the look of that Cypress. If semiconductors are going to start to bounce and start to trend coming out of the summer, I'd look at this setup here in Cree. This is a very, very hated stock on the street, but to me it looks like it's trying to bottom down here. And that's a stock that could pretty explosive to the upside. In fact, I could, if this stock were to start rallying, I could see it at least to 40 from here. So I'm pretty bullish on that name. I have been for the last couple of weeks. And in the financials, gotta like Goldman. The Goldman setup I think looks exquisite going into next week. And then one theme that I like has got to be these cloud stocks, and that's going to be stocks like Red Hat. Let me zoom out here a little bit and show you what I'm looking at. Red Hat down here near support. Rackspace, which I think is also at a pretty decent level of support. I like the way that it's been doing this for a little while. And then you can even look at VMware or Salesforce.com. They all look like they're at actionable spots. That's what I like most about them, is where they're trading right here. So I know that's a long list of long setups, but with the market as oversold as it is, I think you got to be pitching for the long end this week, and maybe just to get up a couple of days to reset that McClellan a little bit, and then we'll start introducing some shorts. But I was a bull at the end of last week. I'm a bull coming into this week. So those are some of my favorite setups in that regard. So anyways, guys, should be a fun week this week. Best of luck to you in your trading. In the meantime, this has been the Option Addict. That's been my watch list. Thanks for watching. Have an awesome week.